Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 216 of Fit to Food Radio. This is another episode with me flying solo. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on supplements today. And don't worry, Matt is coming back. He's just been busy on some other projects, so he will be coming back in the next couple of episodes. I know you've all missed him. Anyway, as promised, I wanted to return to the topic of supplements. Reason being, I've just done quite a few events across October. In-person events where I was asked lots of questions, various webinars, seminars, and our retreats, our Fit to Food retreats about supplements. And I've also just become aware of how much this topic is just kind of exploding on social media and podcasts, becoming more and more complex, more and more overwhelming, but also becoming a thing that creates a huge amount of distraction for people and keeps many of my clients worrying. So often they will visit me and we put a plan in place. And obviously I don't see many clients on a regular basis, not like monthly. So they'll go off. And then they loop back around a year later and like, oh, I'm so confused about creatine or collagen. I saw this article. Friends have told me about this. They're taking this product and they've had amazing results. And then same thing for tests or anything that could really try and optimize either your diet or your nutrition based on these results that have come through. And it really has become such a kind of place for consumerism. Essentially, the whole thing has been hijacked by consumerism, as in nutrition, health, wellness. I'm sure you're aware there's more gadgets and more options than ever. And now one of my jobs is actually to really help people audit what they need, what they've purchased through a moment of like, please help me make this go away, and what's going to be truly useful, and also just highlighting other areas of lifestyle habits that would make a much bigger difference. But it's also one of the reasons that I launched the Mindful Body Method is some of us, and this definitely happened to me, will have a degree of resistance about giving something up that probably isn't helping our health. And it can be exercise, like you're over exercising and you're not giving your body time to recover. And maybe you're over exercising through a period of illness or injury. You're really pushing, because we know exercise is an override and obviously gives us endorphins, makes us feel good. It can become a form of safety and control, as it did for me, which means that I have to do it to again deal with anxiety or be able to focus and still be productive at work. It was an essential need. And so again, the more I did work on meditation, mindfulness, emotional allowing, the more that need did not happen anymore. But the same can be happening for you with food, with smoking, drugs, alcohol intake, no boundaries. So even just being a rescuer, a people pleaser, that's something I've seen across my client base. There's lots of struggles within a family unit, within a household, and they are just there fixing and sorting out everybody else. But it's also become essential to them to do that because it's their safety net, it's their coping mechanism, and they're completely neglecting their own needs. And then, of course, landing after that kind of day means that we just have to have some food to look forward to, and we struggle with appetite control and all the other things. So although supplements are still in my toolkit that I share with my clients and something that I use to help them resource their body, I'm very conscious that the mind would love to find a pill or a potion or a powder to make something go away and make us feel a certain way. And it's just not how life works, and it never has. And obviously we now have medications that do this as well. And what we have to do is try and find this middle ground where medications are definitely valid and needed. And of course, medical care generally is something that I encourage everybody is in that system and making sure they're getting screening done and checking that any abnormalities are investigated, red flags are checked out. And long-term medications may also be absolutely essential. But that doesn't mean there aren't certain things they can be doing with their nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and mindset that would be complementary to the medication, and eventually maybe for some medications mean they don't need them anymore. But as I said, this resistance piece we have to kind of also acknowledge, and I suggest that you explore that, not give yourself loads of grief for that. Now, just going back to supplements generally, the ones that I got questioned on. So this episode, I'm going to focus on midlife. And this has become, again, like an area that we're heavily marketed. I see supplements heavily marketed at midlife and the various different fears that we have about aging. So it either goes down the route of appearance and skin health. And obviously this is what is pushing people into like Botox and facelifts and all that stuff. And so there's lots of stuff that we hear could help with anti-aging of the skin, and glowing skin is what we want, and get rid of this and get rid of that. And there's also more expensive products that could do this. And similarly, there's also the risk of disease that is obviously, take these products and they're going to help lower your risk of dementia is a big one. That's just everywhere right now that I see. Maybe again, it's just what my algorithm shows me, my reality. But there's a huge fear of dementia. And it's even in my family. My dad says every day, like he's on Duolingo every morning and he's like doing his deadlifts and he's like, I don't want dementia. And I'm like, the stress that you feel about dementia, the moment he can't sleep because he's so wound up. And I'm like, if he just got hold of a few more mindful practices, I think that would actually be more beneficial for him, even though he's doing some great stuff in other areas of his life. But we all want to know what supplements we could maybe take that would lower risk of dementia, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, all the things. And then similarly, another aspect is how do we maintain, I guess, some degree of performance as we age? This is also getting very popular because we really do feel resistant, that we don't want to slow down. We don't want to work less. We don't want to exercise less. We don't want to lose strength. We don't want to decline with age. And whilst it's good, there's like a way that we can have this goal that's healthy, and there's a way that we can have this goal that's very egoic and is overriding something that is inevitable, because the body is going to age. And although we can maintain a standard, we do have to constantly step back and be considering that this is aligned with our health, not our mind going, if I'm not this strong, this fit, this young looking, this slim, whatever, or this beautiful or intelligent or all the things, or hardworking, if I'm not those things, it's an absolute disaster in my life. Like, think of the judgment, the criticism, the decline of identity that I will experience. That's really unhealthy. In my opinion, the work that I have done is trying to separate what's true health and us respecting and honoring what our body is doing and trying to achieve, and sometimes getting out the way and just stop meddling with the damn thing and let the body recover and renew and regenerate itself, and be totally surprised at how brilliantly it does that. And then there's also, of course, some degree of which, I think there are some really simple things that we can do with our nutrition and some supplements that we take, because our lifestyles are very, very different now. And so with just that extra bit of support is really helpful to create this nice, strong foundation. And also that allows us, the foundation has to be there for us to do work on our mind, which is the biggest for me now. I think it's the biggest thing I've seen affecting everyone because of the influence of technology in our lives today. So somebody raised this the other day, I'm going to share it with you. It was a chat with someone, and a colleague of mine who's helping me with some technology stuff. And he said, I'm not on Instagram or anything to do with Meta, because of the way that it means that my reality is different to my next door neighbors, because we're just going to fire that thing up every single day and see a totally different world. Whereas if I'm not on there, I can have some platforms that I go to in my own time to learn about stuff, but I'm not looking for a reality online. And I'm going to focus back to my day-to-day interactions and communications and experiences of the weather, the day, conversations that I have in person. It's just really interesting that I was like, gosh, because if you work in this field, you have to be on those platforms and you are having a reality dictated to you. So yeah, I just thought I would share that. It was just very, very interesting. But one of the things that I advocate on Mindful Body Method is so much less time on technology, less time doing, and more time in stillness practices, where some things become so apparent to you, some very simple changes, some simple truths. And people are scared of this, because I'm sure I thought initially, first of all, I was just so resistant to rest, full stop. Like my comfort zone was moving. I'm very kinetic and doing and achieving and working and researching. And that's my safety net. That was my, the zone that I love to be in. And with the stillness, what first came was this massive sense of unease, but with it, some big improvements in symptoms and health and pain and joint pain, and less of a need to do the things like exercise and kind of pushing my body in a way when it needed a little bit more time out and rest. And same for the mind. I think a lot of us are getting very vulnerable to neurological burnout, and people talk about brain fog, but I'm like, what about brain fatigue? the brain and the mind are two separate things, but we're definitely driving the hardware too hard, essentially, and we're pushing it because we have the ego part of our mind that like just has to be going all the time. It doesn't think it has a choice. The list is endless, the jobs are there, and to not do them, as I said before, is almost like could not possibly even go there. But just going back to the kind of stillness side of things, where we do start to connect with the body, honor it, and the whole thing moves together and we get a lot more of a sense of self, we have an agency back where we can start to choose and understand that we can definitely do some things with supplements, with nutrition, with exercise, but we're never going to get to decide essentially if we do or don't get cancer, heart disease, suffering in some of these ways. And maybe there's suffering in your life already that you know will be there forever. It might be that you're caring for a child who's unwell, and so this is something that's just going to go on and on and on for you. But what you can definitely start to do with mindful practices is be with that, and then it doesn't cause the disruption and dysfunction to the body, if that makes sense. So even if we look at our desire to not have cardiovascular disease or dementia, yes, we can take magnesium. Yes, we can do turmeric. Yes, we can do all those things. I'm just so skeptical that a little pill can transform the complexity of what we are and who we are. But if we want to take some turmeric and also be able to process our fear of a condition like cancer, for example, which is strong in family history for me. And I've lost friends and I've lost amazing colleagues in the nutrition industry whose diets were immaculate and they've passed away from cancer. So it's not something that we have a choice over, but there are things that we can do that would minimize it. And eventually an acceptance piece has to come about that we're never going to get to decide what happens next. We can only stay in this present moment and think about the choices that we're making. And so if you are resisting and doing something which you feel is damaging and high risk to your body, even if it's overworking and overcaring for your loved ones, and it's literally causing health condition after health condition, constant things, we want to sit with that resistance and try and see. It's essentially usually about fear. And there's a fear of us stopping, there's a fear of us sitting still. And if we can start to be with that emotion, which is affecting your nervous system, which is affecting your cardiovascular disease, which is affecting your immune system, which might be overactive and going into autoimmunity, if we can actually go right down and walk towards the fear, then we can actually see that we can process it. And then it won't, as I've said, have this like chronic effect on the different systems within the body, which are almost precursors to disease. And just to wind back to, even with cognition now, there's a big fear, as I've said, of dementia, which I'm kind of aware of around me. Lots of people asking me about it, especially as we go into midlife, and we might see parents go through that process and see that it is terrible. My granddad died of Alzheimer's, and so you essentially lose the person before you lose the person, and it inflicts on everybody, because you're also watching the partner mourn the person, before they've lost the person. So, and often the stress of the situation means that in hypervigilance mode until that person passes, and then they have this kind of almost like a breakdown, of course, that comes with the grief. So I have seen firsthand it is such a difficult experience and so frightening to watch. But what it's done with midlife generation is almost like, how the hell do I not have that and go there? And as much as we can put some things in place, we won't necessarily have a say. But one thing that has come out with dementia, and I've really loved Greg Potter's work on this, is that it's usually a comorbidity or it's like coexists with other things that come first. So like the newest research on Alzheimer's is that actually cardiovascular dysfunction is a precursor to it, and glucose regulation, so blood sugar issues, is a precursor to it. That doesn't mean if you have those things that you're going to end up with dementia. So some are going to require medication for sure, but are there things that you can do in your lifestyle, exercise, better sleep, rest, managing your stress, those sorts of things? And it's the managing stress bit that nobody ever got. And as I've said, that was my final piece of the puzzle, and that's why I'm now launching Mindful Body Method, to help people with that part, where we don't understand why we're still repeating behaviors that, aren't helping our health, but we're so stressed we can't stop. And these are some of our coping mechanisms. But just going back to what can we do with supplements? This is something that I discussed on all of these events, and I'm just going to run through really, really quickly the ones that I think are helpful for just every day, and then where you go if you're trying to look at a specific condition. And we can't out supplement lifestyle habits, but we also shouldn't blame ourselves for those lifestyle habits. We should get curious about them and go and investigate and explore them, because they are protective against something we don't want to think about or feel. And that could be in the past, the present, or the future. So that's the first bit of forgiveness that we almost have to do. I had to do that. I was like, I need to really actually wake up and think about all the things I'm trying to struggle against and not have in the future. My parents' own diagnosis definitely triggered me because I was not ready to face a bereavement of one of them. So I realized I had never processed grief in my life. So I had this huge fear of death, especially theirs. So it couldn't happen. So if I went and got like a PhD in cancer, then I could stop that. And of course we can't. That's just the mind running off, thinking it can control everything. But I see this happening with all my clients, with their elderly parents, their sick kids, siblings in stress, partners going down with illness or mental health issues as well. So we have to learn some of these tools. And of course, the supplements can just be there as this strong foundation. So, sorry, we learn the tools like emotional allowing, stillness, acceptance, awareness. And in addition to those, this is where the food and the sleep, the rest, and the supplements are about renewal, like nourishing the body, giving it resources, giving it that platform to be able to maintain some degree of function. So the supplements I'm going to talk about today are creatine, collagen, turmeric, because they're the kind of fashionable ones at the moment, where you're just seeing tons of snippets on social media and feeds where I'm seeing, oh, you're taking the wrong form. Do you know there's a new form? There's a new dose. There's a new type. There's a lot of like, here's the mystery around the supplement. Click here, subscribe, and I'll tell you all you need to know. And it's frustrating because it's really, for me, like confusing consumers, if anything. They're just like, I only just bought this one. I'm supposed to have this one. And I also want to just make some points clear that you should not be spending £50 on collagen. It is not going to bring the desired outcome, whatever that desired outcome is. And the ones that I'm going to work through, I'm going to say, like, just find the cheapest, trustworthy manufacturer you can. And there's an easy way to do that as well. And then I'll just go through the basics of how do we keep cells healthy? Like what do they need? Vitamins, minerals, which ones are we not likely getting that we, could probably add in? And that's going to be to some degree diet dependent and even location dependent where you live, and also lifestyle. So how much you sweat, how much you do, this will all increase our need for certain things. So to wind back, I'm going to just quickly go through all of the ones that are getting the most kind of screen time at the moment. Number one is creatine. And creatine, as I've said on previous talks, it definitely has some great research behind it and can help us as we age and mitigate the things that happen as we age, including sarcopenia, muscle loss, anabolic resistance, struggle to put muscle on. And it can definitely help. There's some good research on it. Might help through menopause, especially with symptoms like brain fog, and reducing the risks of certain diseases by supporting function within the body. Now, what has happened is there's new research going on different types of creatine, but what I would suggest you do is stick with creatine monohydrate. It does draw water into the gut. So if it made you bloated in any way, I would definitely stay with a very low dose. So like 3 to 5 grams, and you could split that into, half a teaspoon in the morning, half at night. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, when you take it, but some people prefer to take it around workouts, after workouts. If you're not training consistently and just taking it, I think exercise is more powerful than creatine, by the way, if we're thinking about muscle. So I wouldn't take creatine hoping that it's going to deliver. But you could just take a small dose in your morning smoothie or cup of tea. And the monohydrate form is the one that's most researched. There's been some new stuff on hydrochloride, so creatine hydrochloride. There's also micronized creatine, which might be a bit more digestible. So if you had bloating, you could try those forms instead if you wish to. And then the next question is, do we take the dose higher for menopause? There were some studies suggesting that could be beneficial. And there's also studies on a loading dose of 20 grams. And the higher dose for menopause works out to around, could be going up to 20 grams a day. You can experiment. It's a cheap supplement. Give it a go. Quite a few people that I know, clients that when they've come to me, have already tried this. thanks to social media and thinking more is better, and they got really bloated and they didn't like it. It does add water weight, but that's not a problem if you know it's water weight. But some people still cannot stand to see the scales increase. It's like such a emotional attachment to the numbers, which is insightful in itself. Even if you know it's benefiting you from all the different health perspectives, you don't want to see that kilo. So some people don't take it for that reason. But as I've said, putting half a teaspoon or a teaspoon into your morning whatever is helpful. It can be helpful, and it's very low risk generally. There's also a bit of research that creatine coming out of kind of new manufacturers in different countries, and China's been one that's been mentioned, might have higher levels of contamination of certain things. So CreaPure, and I think it was called I have to check this, but Crealis. I haven't used this one. We just use CreaPure, which originally, most of it's manufactured in Germany, just has really good purity standards. So again, what you want is something that has a GMP stamp, good manufacturing practices. Supplements are not regulated like medications. So there is batch testing done, but it's voluntary and it's sporadic. So you really want to use companies for your supplements who have third-party testing done, where an external company comes in and batch tests and checks there's no contaminants, it's pure, it's got exactly what it said it has in it on the label, and it's also protected against damage, because a lot of supplements that we take, if they're exposed to bright light or heat, can oxidize, and then we don't want to be taking them. But there has been so much research on lots of formulas and green powders and stuff having high levels of lead, and because they're grown in soils which were contaminated. So I really would suggest that if you're going to use a company and you don't know, you contact them and you say, can you show me a certificate of analysis that this is a very clean product? And if they go, walk away. So that's just a way, rather than constantly asking, is it a good product? Is it a good product? Or relying on friends who are basically recommending it, because a lot of these things can have positive placebo. But if it's expensive, we don't want positive placebo with a price. So I would really suggest asking those two questions. So it's, looking for that GMP stamp and asking if they do third-party testing and can show you a certificate of analysis. That's really helpful. So that is pretty much it on creatine. Collagen, I think, is becoming the biggest con on the internet. And so I'll try and be very succinct with this. Most of the research is showing, although it had some interesting initial research on skin and joints, like especially at tendonitis, most research now shows, excuse me, need some water, that just a high protein diet would have the same effect. So I would personally, I know some people are paying these really expensive subscriptions, £50 a month for collagen. It's really well marketed. It looks incredibly sexy. It doesn't do anything that what they're taking it for. I know it's not going to do, especially I've come across people who are still smoking and drinking excessively and taking collagen. And it's like, well, they're two pro-aging things that will place oxidative stress on the body. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, don't think that £50 worth of collagen is going to undo those two habits. Visit why those two habits are so difficult for you to give up when you have this desire for health. And that's just a really important piece of work for those individuals to do. But back to collagen, if you swear by it and you think it's good, I would just look for the cheapest form. And again, there seems to be more research on bovine for joints and tendonitis, marine for maybe skin. I've kind of lost interest in the whole thing, if I'm really honest, because I think we're majoring in the minors with it and taking a scoop of about 20 grams a day. Companies like My Protein have good manufacturing practices, and that's where I would go if you want to continue taking it. But instead, I think a better focus would be on just a high protein diet. And by that, I'm talking 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, maybe higher if you're a heavy exerciser looking to grow extra muscle mass and like eating that amount of protein, because remember, you've got to digest that amount of protein, which most people can't. And this is where a lot of gut issues like constipation and reflux, bloating will come from. Heavy boluses of protein going through the system without the amount of fiber and hydration that's needed to actually kind of digest it will create many of those symptoms. So again, we always want to be looking at kind of bigger picture. And you need good stomach acid to digest protein. So try and acidify the gut at protein-rich meals. I often suggest clients add things like vinaigrettes to their meals. You can drink a bit of beetroot juice, adding kind of lemon and lime juice to your salads and things like that, just to help to denature protein, and go for slow cooked forms if your gut is pretty sensitive. And that the slow cooking where the protein goes very soft naturally makes it more digestible. Over to turmeric. Again, this is one which has a lot of research on it now, and it's really, really interesting. I still think it can only be part of a lifestyle that we decide to lead when it comes to supporting cognitive function and lowering our risk of dementia. So again, when we see all these studies on blood sugar and cardiovascular, you want to be thinking about all the food that you eat and the quality of your sleep and the emotional state that you're in in life, and the exercise that you're doing. And too much is not great either. So don't be thinking that you can outrun many of these processes, as in the disease processes that we're trying to avoid. Again, we honor that the body is always trying to support function, and the mind is always trying to chase goals that maybe were not ours in the first place, or we got carried away with. So back to the turmeric, as you probably all know, that turmeric actually in root form with some black pepper and some oil in a dish is a brilliant way to get cheap turmeric if you want to, and you are up against it with money. And you could make, again, like a golden milk where you grate the turmeric in as a nice start and end to your day, and add some black pepper and some cinnamon into whatever milk it works for your digestive system. And that's a really nice way to get some anti-inflammatory nutrients in cheaply. If you want to go down the route of good supplements, some have put black pepper in to the supplement. So you'll be looking for a piperine addition. And then we also know that turmeric in a lipid base is more absorbable and can be utilized more by the body. So we look for the BCM form or the Mariva form. So you can have a look and it'll be labeled. And then finally, Longvida, the Longvida form is again, it's been essentially in a lipid base that may be able to cross the blood-brain barrier. So if you're, again, concerned about cognition, this would be a good option to go with. And it's about 500 milligrams twice a day. But as I said, it's expensive. And many of the things that actually could support cognitive health, I think if you're kind of trying to budget and save money right now, which many people are, I would actually look more at kind of mindfulness practices, things that support sleep. In Mindful Body Method, we've just launched and everyone's doing body scans and yoga nidras, and I've got lots of videos on doing less and how to actually, it's almost like put boundaries in place to be able to do that. And many people are already experiencing benefits to that. So simple, costs nothing. It's 10 minutes of a body scan lying down, but also understanding the why and why we're doing this, which is what I'm teaching in there, is why they're doing it. And as I've said, I think it's, I remember having a discussion with a client where she brought me this turmeric that she really wanted for her joint problems. And for a long time with this individual, I've known that the marriage is in a lot of conflict. And she said, I've read all these articles about turmeric and I brought this one, but I think I should have brought one like this. Is that right? And I was like, no, you got the right turmeric, but you have the wrong husband. Like, that's what we need to talk about. And it's not that there necessarily needs to be big lifestyle changes initially, but there can be ways that some of these situations can be, first of all, we develop an awareness of them and accept them, and then solutions can come. But throwing money at supplements is just this huge distraction for a lot of people. So with the turmeric, if that's what you want to do, that's another option. And then I think what most people would benefit from, as I've said before on the podcast, is just a really good quality high-grade multivitamin you can have B vitamins in their methylated form. And again, this has become a rabbit hole that many, especially nutrition professionals, are going down entire courses on this process called methylation, where we essentially do lots of different functions via this cellular process. But every time I went on a course, I was like, I feel like we're so in our infancy with this process. We know so little other than actually kind of encouraging clients to have a really nutrient-dense diet, maybe try and take a methylated B vitamin and make sure their zinc and magnesium levels and vitamin D levels are optimal. And even with that methylated B vitamin or multivitamin, it might be too much for the system. So maybe taking it once a week or just not at all and just focusing on a really good nutrient-dense diet could work better for these individuals. But what I would also say is the people who feel like this is probably going more into the professional realm here, the clients that I see that would fit the box of someone who can't methylate and is having issues with this process. So they've got histamine intolerance, kind of attention deficit issues, maybe very prone to low moods, very prone to like dopamine chasing because their serotonin, that's our kind of feel good, feel safe and satisfied. Their serotonin levels, never seem good. They may have a history of taking antidepressants. So when I look at these clients, and they tend to be non-risk takers often as well. So they almost, too much stress puts them in an almost like a freeze state straight away. There's a big thing that was never mentioned on methylation, which is actually they're under a lot of nervous system stress. And maybe that nervous system is in that state because of childhood experiences. So when I look back, it's like, were they poor methylators, or were they someone who had actually experienced a lot of adverse childhood experiences and trauma? And obviously they fit the bill of a poor methylator. This is going off on a tangent, sorry, but will make sense if you've kind of gone down the methylation route, which some of my clients have on YouTube and other places. By the time they get to me, they're so confused and they're talking about these cellular processes. I'm like, how do you even know about that? That's crazy. But it's just really interesting that we can get so convinced that the solution lies in a nutrient and a metabolic pathway and a thing that we could manage. And again, it becomes slightly egoic of our industries, functional medicine, nutritional therapy, to go, we can intervene with this and we can fix this problem and we're done. And we're denying a human being that's had an entire decade, several decades of life experience at that point that they're trying to make sense of in their mind. And it's really affected their nervous system. And their nervous system is what guides the gut, the hormones, the cognition elements. It's like, are we safe or are we in danger? That's the kind of thing that the nervous system's always trying to figure out. Have I got the safety to have a bowel movement and pass urine and fight a virus and tidy up damaged cells? Or am I in danger? Do I need to release histamine, contract, hold, grip, don't have a bowel movement, don't let the gut move, don't release urine, so urinary retention and all these things shut down the hormones, low testosterone, low estrogen, low progesterone. And then what we're doing is going in with things like HRT into a system that's like, no, we're not safe. Okay, have all of this. And this is where sometimes it gets into a big quagmire of like, we're forcing something in to fix a system that could fix itself if it was given safety. And that was, again, a big factor in my own journey, was coming back to this idea of safety. And I create the safety. It's not something I can do with ashwagandha or theanine or all these options. And even sertraline and nortriptyline were suggested to me. And again, I'm not suggesting that you avoid those medications. I just knew, one, they didn't really have an impact on me, but I also just knew I was up here. Those things could have never worked for me, because I was like, I don't understand my why. I need to know that why has this happened, first of all. Okay, looping back round. So the multivitamin, I would say, not everyone needs it, but if you wanted to just protect yourself, especially if you're on a limited diet with gut issues or you're traveling or under a bit of stress, you could take a multi designed for your life stage, your gender. So again, it will say like multi for 50 plus, and there's reasons for that. So certain nutrients for prostrate will be in there. Iron will be in there for women who are in reproductive era, but not for a menopausal woman. So they're designed to meet nutrient needs at a very safe level. But even with those, you could say, I'm just going to take it 3 times a week because it's a quality multi, and I'm going to really focus on my nutrition outside of that. We also don't want to get complacent that we're taking vitamins and so we don't have to think about nutrition, which I know some people would love, that we could just take this all-in-one drink and then eat whatever for the rest of the day, or not eat, depending on where you're at with biohacking. So I think it's really important to understand that we nourish the body where possible with food. But the methyl multi, along with what most people need, is additional vitamin D and K2. And I always suggest testing if you're kind of concerned that you might need more, you have darker skin, you don't get much sunlight, you haven't been away, and especially sunlight between mid-morning and midday, which is when we would get the UVB, which would be really helpful. And if you're prone to low vitamin D levels, it will manifest usually as low mood, aches and pains, poor immunity, possibly hormonal stuff, because it's a pre-pro hormone vitamin D. So cheap tests are now available from supplement companies like BioCare, Better You, the NHS in the UK. If you put NHS vitamin D test, it will come up. It's about £40 to get tested, and worth it so you can dose yourself over the winter months and just guard against insufficiency or true deficiency. Magnesium is another one that I think most people benefit from. Again, just seeing the research, just seeing its bit tricky to get from our nutrition now because of the way that, you know, the food is grown and travels so much. It would come in leafy greens, dark chocolate, nuts, and seeds. So again, it's just helpful to take around 300, about 350 milligrams is a really safe dose in glycinate form to help with sleep and anxiety. In terms of just keeping the mind a bit calmer, again, you won't out supplement a chattering mind, but it can be helpful. And citrate if you're prone to constipation. And again, you're working on the cause of that constipation whilst using it just to maybe ease some of those symptoms. So why is the system gripping and not moving as it should do? And just on that note, one of the areas that I've seen this sort of thing happen quite a bit in terms of this override really manifesting in a nervous system that's not happy is the weight loss injections. So I've had a number of clients who might have come to me in the past who've come back to me saying, I decided to try the injection, and all of them have a degree of shame. And I want you to know there's no judgment. I completely understand. Everyone understands why you would go there, especially with the health implications of being overweight. And if you've tried everything, why would you not try this? But what I want to say is, personally, what I'm observing is so many side effects, and many of them are not eating at all. So there's still a deep problem there around fear of food, fear of not trusting self with food, fear of overeating, preparing food, even being in the kitchen. And the fact that there's no appetite comes as a relief, but the excessive appetite and the lack of appetite regulation and satiation mechanisms not being in place was nothing to do with greed. It's always to do with usually kind of emotional elements where it's like, I need to eat to not feel something. There's a hunger there for comfort that I don't have in my life because of X. And it's that bit that we have to go and explore. And then the kind of intuition comes back around food, and they're not wanting to be overly full, and they're wanting to eat what really works for your system, what nourishes you. It does all return, I promise that. But it's a deeper piece of work to do. But the clients that I'm working with had to come off the jab because they essentially had low iron status. I've seen low B12, low folate. I've seen reflux, gastroparesis, and then joint pains, muscle pain. And they themselves recognize I'm not eating enough. I haven't dealt with the problem, and I'm only going towards comfort food, but just small amounts. And that is not going to lower my risk of disease, which is why I did this, to really give myself a decent start in that process. So I just want to encourage you that if you're in that place, it's really worth getting support if you can feel those symptoms kicking in. And I know online what's really interesting is, because I talk to clients about this, it then comes down my algorithm the next day, and I see these ads of these women spinning around and saying, I lost all this weight, and it's brilliant and no one can tell me otherwise. But this is the problem when we go for the shortcut. The original thing, I don't want to say the root cause, because it's a million different causes of why we're doing this thing that might not work for our health. But the original thing that we weren't looking at, the processing of, it could be, like I've said, fear and anxiety around, it's not really food, it's just we're directing it towards food. It's actually more external stuff that we came to this for safety and protection, and we can't let it go. And the world feels far too frightening and unsafe right now to even think about it. So we're just holding this as like for our sanity, almost our sense of safety. But you can let it go once you do some deeper work where you actually get comfortable with the uncomfortable emotions, and actually you can put them in the sidecar with you for the day and drive off, and a little bit of that. And I've seen this over and over again. It's absolutely amazing to watch because it's free and it doesn't cost anything. And we don't need the coping mechanism anymore. And we don't need all the medications and supplements that were providing us or protecting us from this kind of self-sabotaging that we were doing as well. Just coming back to final things that are diet dependent when it comes to supplements. So again, if you are plant-based, either completely vegan, vegetarian, there might be a need for some, obviously if you're completely plant-based, you have need for B12 for sure, and maybe likely B6. It's good to ask ChatGPT now, as everyone does, foods rich in B6, and get as many of those as you can in. But it will always depend on your expenditure as well. If you're working, traveling, exercising hard, you might need more of the whole of the B complex. So just a really good vegan multi with higher levels, that, you know, enough B12 but extra B6 in there is going to be beneficial. And same for zinc. Zinc is in protein rich foods. you might not get enough in a plant-based diet. Iron similarly. So getting your iron levels checked. Ferritin and hemoglobin is really good for looking at the Bs, but also zinc and iron levels generally. So we're looking at folate, B12, and iron levels when we get a hemoglobin. Like a complete full blood count is really helpful. So having that done on a 6-month to 12-month basis, if you're vegetarian, vegan, or if just symptoms kick in like fatigue, then get your blood count done, have a quick look at that, make sure your ferritin is tested, and then you can supplement with iron as needed. But some of the iron complexes have zinc and B vitamins in there as well, like Hemoplex. So you might need something like that that just covers everything. And of course, just be trying to get as much from your nutrition as possible, as well as honoring the need for rest. And always consider, I had someone this week who was like, I want to enter another ultra marathon. And there's just lots of injuries and fatigue from the last one. So, we had a long discussion about the why and what it offers. And can you just wait and just like park that? And just see what you could do, recovering your body, and does that drive go away if you actually start to do a little bit more processing on some other stuff and go to areas that you're neglecting slightly. Finally, omegas. So again, with those, you want your oily fish if you're on a mixed diet, and that's salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardine, and herring, 2-3 servings a week. Or you use a really good pure fish oil. So again, do your research here, ask for certificate of analysis, ask for purity standards, should be shouted about on these websites of any oils. If you'd like to have omega-369 oils, on a plant-based diet, good companies that I know of are Nordic Naturals. Obviously, I mentioned Life Extension now. Eskimo is another one here based here in the UK. Udo's quite a popular brand, and they're all in dark glass bottles, and there's lots of ways that they protect the oils from oxidation as well. And obviously, if you're plant-based, you go with algae. So an algae omega-3 instead, an algae DHA. And as well as trying to get some precursors into your nutrition. So there might be flax and pumpkin seeds, but ideally I'd probably use algae as your main source of omega-3s. And there's a big debate rumbling on about seed oils and omega-6 at the moment. And I think what I would suggest with that is just trying to make sure that you meet the basics with omega-3s. The sources of omega-6 that you have come from whole foods or things like nut butters and things like that, fine. So you're having pumpkin seed or sunflower seed butter, and you're also making sure your omega-3 needs are met. And your cooking oil is just generally something that's a high quality. And ideally, we're not doing too much high temperature cooking, trying to focus on low temperatures and stir frying with a mix of oil and water. So we don't have to use so much oil. But if we've got things like olive oil in there with all the antioxidants, so again, I see this go on and on and on, and I think it will continue. There'll be more research. It's actually become a bit of a kind of controversy between, in some ways, almost like plant-based and omnivorous eaters, because obviously this is where we're going back to saturated fat and cholesterol to some degree, and seed oils being toxic or pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory. More research is coming out. I'm a big fan of Dr. Ids on Instagram. I like his stuff. I think he's one, very similar to me and Matt. We started out on a quest for the truth. Like, what is the truth that would help most people? And the research just evolves so fast. It's almost getting so confusing that it's becoming more helpful to go, what have we been doing in food traditions for hundreds of years? What seems to make sense? And you know that kind of products with 40 ingredients in and lots of numbers on, probably not great. That's not to say we can't have those occasionally, and oils are processed food, but we could probably use them minimally and just for pleasure. And also, it's just one tiny part of our human biology, and you could have the best oils. You could biohack your way through all of this and have your low mold coffee, red light therapy, ice bath every morning, meditate for 3 hours, and have this special olive oil that's like 50 quid a bottle with 100,000 antioxidants that the blues owners have been having, whatever. I see all sorts now down my feed. And it's a full-time job, and you've forgotten that you're here to live and have fun and have conversations and interact and watch the sunrise and sit in nature quietly and appreciate how amazing it is. And just those really simple things like that we have just forgotten about. So you might not be down that rabbit hole. Maybe you're just literally firefighting in the home, trying to stop everyone eating shit and your brain from being fried. We're all at different places with this stuff. But if you are chasing that kind of, or even if you're watching the biohackers and wishing that you could have a fraction of what they have, I really don't think you should. We've all got simple things that we could do that would make a huge difference. We don't need any more stuff. We don't need any more products. We don't need any more things. The final supplement I'm going to cover is all the digestive stuff, where I think also probiotics have become, again, they're products, they're sold to us. We know so little, again, I think, about the microbiome. I think in a regulated system, once we get on top of the nervous system elements, the gut starts to work properly again. You will then crave things that you need. What's really interesting is I followed Lucy Mailing, who has I think she's got like 2 PhDs in the microbiome now. I'm not sure. She just dedicates herself to researching it. I've had a session with her one-to-one, and I like her stuff, but even she's saying it's moving so fast. Like, when the original thinking around having antibiotics was that we would take a probiotic, and then now they've done some really robust trials. They've shown that actually what might be more helpful is we do something called fecal microbiota transplant. So we take a sample of your own feces, and then it's encapsulated, and you could take that, or you can actually do it rectally as well. This is something that's been discussed for such a long period of time. So you can repopulate the colon with your own microbiome that was prior to having the antibiotics. But in a new trial that was done, I think it was a randomized controlled trial, they showed that actually diet diversity after antibiotics was way more effective than all of it, which comes right back to the body knows what it needs to do. We just need to put some resourcing things in place. So diversifying, and don't go nuts with this and start to, I know Zoe App has told us 30 plant things and you run out, and just diversify as much as you possibly can. Just different spices, different teas, different vegetables, different fruits, eat seasonally. If you think about it, our body naturally in the winter wants warm foods, soups, stews, root vegetables, starches, and in the summer wants, salads and fruits that have more water in because we're sweating more. Like we literally crave foods that we need. And of course, what hijacks that is dopamine. And dopamine is our drive for food reward and pleasure. And that gets out of control, again, because we are pushing ourselves, our body, our mind, everything too hard. We're not, we'll probably end up in some sense of serotonin insufficiency because we're pushing ourselves into a nervous system state of hypervigilance and doing all the time and upregulation. And so we have to have the dopamine hit. We have to have something to look forward to all the time. The next coffee, certain foods, retail hits, researching in things, buying things, holidays. I've got clients booking their holidays for 2 years' time because they need something to look forward to. And that chasing of pleasure is what we're designed to do as hunters and gatherers. It would have driven us to basically find nourishment. But it's obviously in our society today, it's going down the pathways that probably aren't helpful to us and actually more towards hedonistic stuff, when what we want to do is find more eudaimonic happiness in just being and kind conversations and great company. And as I said, just being out in nature or volunteering or things that feed our soul a bit more. So I'd be very cautious of the probiotics and prebiotics. You'd really want to get advice if you needed them, rather than putting a ton in your system that you might not need. And again, possibly wasting your money. So I think that's pretty much covered the basics. There's positive placebo, as I've said before, possibility with all these things, but we could be wasting money when you could get the positive effects through other means that cost nothing. And as I said earlier, this is why I've launched Mindful Body Method as a community to really start to educate people about, here's what you need to know about nutrition and supplements, but here's what we really need to focus on when it comes to the mind and emotions. And for most of us, we are really falling into, as I said before, that kind of dopamine chasing, because we're not stepping back and thinking about what we're trying to escape. And so we're falling into habits of overworking, overcaring, leaky boundaries. And then suggestions are coming through that this is something to do with our gut and food, and we could take a probiotic, and we get lost down there because that's easier for us to go that way, rather than, as I've said, pan out and go macro with this and say, actually, I think generally with supplements, it's like going to the gym and just doing loads of calf raises, whereas actually stepping back and doing some bigger lifestyle changes in terms of doing less, sitting still, understanding the mind a bit more with some very simple pieces of education, some stillness practices, and gently resourcing the body with, some food, not even taking away your coping mechanisms initially. So for some people, I'm like, just keep it in. Like, don't take it away yet. We're going to learn with the stillness and the doing less. And then you're going to know what you need to do. You don't have to make any decisions. It's a very gentle journey at your pace. But I'm already seeing the number of discussions in the group that people are saying, just, why am I doing so much? Why was I falling into that trap? Why was I thinking spending all that money on this supplement, or, that holiday was going to fix this situation, when actually I can fix it very easily with some simple conversations and some actions now that I've paused and started to consider things in a different way. And again, this comes from, as I've said, processing the past emotions, difficult experiences, because otherwise we are fighting the future to not repeat the past, but it does it anyway, if that makes sense. You'll know if you know. That's what I was trying to do. So we get stuck in a struggle that we think we're controlling things, and it's all an illusion. And it doesn't take much before the straw breaks the camel's back, because more things go wrong and we don't have that foundation to be able to cope with it all, because we were busy thinking that working hard and exercising more or eating more was going to help us to escape it all. I do have a founding member rate with Mindful Body Method on at the moment. And this is, if you join up now, this is your rate for the rest of maybe life. Who knows how long this will go on for. We also have a masterclass with Sam Miller coming up at the end of November. So please grab a spot. If this kind of speaks to you, it's where you're at. If you feel ready, there is an amazing bunch, as I said, in there already. I'm so chuffed at the people that have got involved and what they're sharing. It's a journey of reflection. So you'll see a lot of yourself in other people. So again, community becomes quite powerful, because we actually don't feel so lonely and are able to understand and see progress in others that could help us. But it's not in that competitive sense that we have online, where everyone seems to be nailing it and we're just failing all the time. It's more, people are turning up vulnerable, open, and actually going, wow, like this simple stuff is really powerful. And it's encouraging, inspiring one another in that way. So if you would like to join, please head to kerismarsden.com or fitterfood.com, or you can email us at info@fitterfood.com and we can show you the link. It's based on school.com, just in case you're a bit confused. If you head straight to school.com, you'll find the Mindful Body Method there as well, and you can just join straight away. As I said, we have a founding membership rate on of $49 at the moment. So please grab that. And I am really confident that you'll find value in the community and be able to understand so much more that will make health easier and much more intuitive and innate for you. That is enough from me, and I will see you over in episode 217, where we're going to be talking about muscle mass and aging. Again, another hot topic on my feed, so I'm imagining you're kind of maybe having a few questions about it. So I'm just going to be sharing some of the basics on that topic in the next episode. And that's it from me. Have a good day. Bye-bye.